It seems the New South Wales Premier has time on his mind.
So, it's 9:15 on the play school clock. Let's see what's under the clock.
Wow, more clocks. Some with the little hand pointing at 9 and others at 3. Oh, and there's the Premier.
In my view, 9 to 3 doesn't work.
Dominique Perrottet wants more women in the workforce. And to do it, he's shaking the school system up.
To look outside the box.
And outside the box, another clock. This time the little hand is at 7. That's right, a handful of schools across New South Wales are trialling a 7 a.m. start and earlier finish.
There goes the diamond window and the round window, now the square.
It's probably going to be impossible to find one 6-hour window of time that works for all families. I think the inflexibility of our school systems is one problem, but we need to step back and look at the whole picture and look at systemically what else we could change.
It's part of a push to break down structural gender barriers.
When you talk to women, they'll often talk about that hard cut-off at 3 o'clock. We need to look at different opportunities to make sure that they can thrive.
Around 70% of couple families across the country have both partners working. And of the 416,000 one-parent working families with dependents, 78% are single mothers.
The reality for mums in Australia is that they still carry the biggest burden of responsibility for family caring. So when we look at access to early education and care, or we look at school hours, it is mums who tend to be punished by the systems that we have.
But it's not just about parents.
What we have to be really careful about is making changes just because it makes it convenient for parents. That's not the purpose of schooling. There isn't a lot of research that starting earlier and earlier and earlier can have any sort of significant educational benefit for our kids. It's really just a matter of convenience for us.
And after years of fighting for more pay and 2 years of remote learning and general exhaustion, teachers might not be on board with extra duties.
We are losing fabulous educators at a rate of knots that we cannot sustain. We do not need to add hours to these wonderful professionals' lives, and so asking them to attend and supervise kids at after-school care is a surefire recipe for driving teachers out of the profession.
So is there a better way to balance the competing demands of modern work and old school hours? We never looked through the circle window. Maybe the answer's there.
Why didn't you look, Kerry?
I know,
it
sorry
was your
guys,
story. Just
tomorrow. I mean, anything that starts a conversation about how to get more women back into the workforce is a good conversation to have. But how on earth would you please every family and every different job that parents do? I mean, it is interesting. My son now being a teenager, I mean, it doesn't seem to wake up until about 11 in the morning. So perhaps shifting the day isn't such a bad idea for more independent teenagers.
Yeah,
but that's not going to work for primary school and babysitting.
The high school needs to be 3 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Yeah, or 11 p.m.
But surely even if you move it then, like it's only relative to when you're meant to be up. So even if you move it to 3 p.m, suddenly you're not getting out of bed till 6 p.m.
But it is interesting because the whole idea is about getting women back into the workforce. But surely there's other ways we need to look. Maybe we need to make sure that men and women are both splitting the at-home care with the work care, you know, like in other countries. That works. We saw earlier in our show that only 12% of men choose to take parental leave, even though it's offered to them. So there's a whole adjustment that needs to take place. In Germany, they do 4-day weeks. You know, like, so maybe there's other things that would need to happen at the same time.
I'm not surprised Dominique Perrottet wants to stagger school times. You can't fit the 6 kids into the same car at the same time. You might just need to start his own school.
Or just get a fleet of cars.
A fleet of cars.
What do you think would be an option?
I don't know. What I find interesting about this, and you kind of gestured at it before, is if this is a policy that's designed to get women, like to make it easier for women to workforce, I reckon Adam Voigt's point is a really interesting one, which is, hang on, but that's not an education policy. So we might be in a situation where we actually have to choose between these two things. Are we going to sacrifice what might be the best education practice for the sake of women's participation?
Right.
I hadn't thought of that until he said it. But it's a really interesting point because we kind of got to stop at that point and say, well, what are the priorities what rein do we want to pull here if they're not pulling in the same direction?
I guess at least they're trying something.
Yeah, it's worth a crack, and it is a pilot at this point, so we'll see.